It started with a routine late-night project. Alan Mercer, a software engineer in his late 20s, was known among his peers for his obsession with code. Not just any code, hidden, clever, secretive lines that only a keen eye could spot. His apartment in downtown Seattle smelled faintly of coffee and burnt circuitry, a testament to nights spent debugging programs no one else dared to touch. That's where he found it, not in a server, not in a cloud repository, but in a dusty, forgotten offline game he had picked up on a clearance rack. It was called Eclipse of the Mind, a puzzle adventure from the early 2000s. Alan had a habit of dissecting old games the way some people read old books. It wasn't nostalgia, it was curiosity. Something about the simplicity of the coding, the straightforwardness of the puzzles, and the early graphics drew him in. He wasn't expecting anything unusual. But by the third hour of playing, he noticed something odd. A message, just a few characters tucked into the binary of the game's save files. It was encrypted. At first, he laughed. A programmer leaving Easter eggs in a game, cute. But the more he decoded, the less it felt like a joke. The first decrypted message was chillingly specific: Red Building, West Alley. Friday night. Alone. It read like a note to someone, not part of the game. Alan double-checked the file. He had no reason to doubt what he was seeing, but the specificity gnawed at him. He searched the local news archives, almost half expecting to find a forgotten crime matching the description. He didn't, at least, not at first. Over the next few weeks, Alan became obsessed. Every night, he played the game, extracted the save files, and decrypted the messages. They weren't random strings. Each one contained coordinates, dates, and sometimes names. Every single one seemed like a premonition, predicting real crimes, some violent, some petty, all unnervingly specific. The first time he realized the implications, he froze. One of the messages described a mugging at a downtown convenience store. The following morning, local news reported it exactly as the game had predicted. Alan didn't know what to do. Reporting it felt absurd. Who would believe that an offline game was predicting crimes before they happened? And yet, the evidence was sitting there, encoded in plain sight in a set of files no one had touched in decades. He started keeping a journal, meticulously documenting each message and its outcome. He began to notice a pattern. The crimes weren't random, they were escalating. Small thefts, vandalism, break-ins, then assaults, then murders. And always, the messages came first. He tried to warn the authorities. Detective Lisa Chong was polite, professional, and patient, but when Alan laid out his theory, that a video game was a harbinger of crime, she raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Mercer," she said carefully, "I've worked homicide for 15 years. If there were a magical computer predicting crimes, don't you think we'd have heard about it by now?" But she didn't dismiss him outright. She allowed him to share the files, to show her the decrypted messages. Even she had to admit the coincidences were staggering. They began to cross-reference dates and locations with unsolved cases, cold reports, minor incidents. More than 50% matched in some way. The timing, the location, the victims' descriptions, it was all too precise to ignore. Alan went deeper into the game's coding. Every level seemed to have its own pattern, its own encrypted language. He discovered an entire hidden layer of files, some of which predated the game's official release. It was as though someone had built a message system into the code, not for players, but for an unknown audience. The more he explored, the more disturbing it became. One message wasn't a crime at all, it was a warning. Don't follow. They're watching. Soon, Alan felt eyes on him, watching every move. His apartment no longer felt safe. Strange emails appeared in his inbox, unsigned, with attachments that made no sense, yet the metadata matched his computer's timestamps. Someone, or something, knew he was decoding the messages. Then came the night that changed everything. A new message appeared in his decrypted file: apartment, West Tower. Thursday. Alone. Code red. Alan's heart skipped. That was his building. His floor. His apartment. He debated calling the police, but fear paralyzed him. Instead, he stayed awake, computer screens casting shadows across the room. Hours passed, and he could hear nothing, until a faint scratching at his window drew his attention. He turned, heart racing, and caught a shadow moving across the glass, a figure, impossibly still, just outside the pane. He stumbled backward, knocking over his monitor. When he dared to look again, the shadow was gone. No footprints on the ledge. No signs of forced entry. Just the message blinking on his screen, soon. That night, he realized the truth, the messages weren't just predicting crimes. They were guiding them. Someone had encoded their intentions into the game, a digital manifesto of evil, and he was the only one who could read it. Every time he decrypted a new message, he was getting closer to understanding the pattern, but also closer to the perpetrator. The line between observer and participant blurred. Alan started to see them everywhere. People in cafes, in the street, staring too long. Every new crime reported on the news felt like it was happening because of him, because he had unlocked the knowledge. His obsession consumed him, work, friends, sleep, all secondary to the encrypted warnings. The final message came one morning with no warning, no preamble. It was short, brutal, and unmistakable: Mercer. Tonight. Alone. The coordinates pointed to a parking garage 2 blocks from his apartment. He didn't go. He stayed home, barricading doors, calling every friend he could think of. Hours dragged by. The police wouldn't respond fast enough, and if the game's pattern held true, no one could protect him. Finally, the computer went dark on its own. No reason. No error. Just blank. The next morning, the city woke to a report of a break-in at a downtown apartment, Alan's, though he had stayed home unharmed. Nothing taken. Just a note left behind, scrawled on a scrap of notebook paper: "We see you." Alan Mercer was never found. The game disappeared from his hard drive. Friends reported he'd left town suddenly, but no one knew where. Some said he'd gone into hiding. Others whispered something darker, that the game had finally claimed its observer. And somewhere, buried in old code, the messages remain. Waiting. Silent, yet watching, for the next player who dares to decrypt them. Because some secrets are never meant to be unlocked.